In the 1800s, women were expected to restrict their sphere of interest to the home and the family. They were not encouraged to obtain a real education or pursue a professional career. Any woman that wanted to acquire a profession equal to a man was considered immoral or insane. Women were not perceived as fit to work due to the gender discrimination that existed in the society. They rather provided many paid services needed by the public. For example, a woman named Margaret Ann Bulkley had to conspire to get into medical school. She disguised herself as a man and became a doctor. She worked as a surgeon for the British Army under the name James Barry. Women were considered to be objects that men acted upon, and women were also not allowed to vote. Only under such social conditions in 1849, Elizabeth Blackwell became the first female doctor of the United States of America.
A true pioneer in the sense of the word, somebody with great grit and compassion.
Dr. Blackwell overcame insurmountable odds to achieve this feat. Her leadership and legacy continues to be a source of inspiration for many women. Elizabeth's friend, Mary Donaldson, who was dying of uterine cancer, complained about the poor treatment she'd received from a male physician and encouraged Elizabeth to become a doctor. After being rejected by 29 different medical colleges, she finally got admitted to Geneva Medical College in 1847. Her acceptance was a mark of Blackwell's resilience in the face of innumerable hurdles which strengthened her leadership qualities. The main reason for her ejection from previous colleges was because she was a woman and therefore people thought of her as intellectually inferior. The college is now known as Hobart and William Smith College. Although she was accepted into this college, many of her professors told her that she couldn't participate in the dissections of body parts, and she was told to step out of the room during the reproduction unit of the textbook. Elizabeth protested her exclusion and was finally allowed to attend. She was able to perform dissections on dead bodies. Elizabeth's perseverance laid the foundation for her leadership and legacy. Elizabeth Blackwell graduated out of Geneva Medical College at the top of her class in 1849, becoming the first woman in the United States to obtain a medical degree, which led to Blackwell's legacy. An important barrier was breached. When she received her degree, Dr. Lee, the dean of the college, stood up and made a courtly bow in her direction, acknowledging her achievement. That occasion marked the culmination of years of trial and disappointment for Miss Blackwell and was a key event in the struggle for the emancipation of women in the 19th century of America. In 1848, a year before she graduated, the very first Women's Rights Convention took place at Seneca Falls, New York. The Declaration was presented at the convention. It was signed by 68 women and 32 men. Although many people respected the courage and abilities behind the drafting of the document, they were unwilling to abandon conventional mindsets. But Elizabeth Blackwell broke the bonds. She demonstrated that women can take actions themselves. She proved that women can become doctors and act upon the bodies of male patients. Because none of the hospitals in New York were ready to employ her, in June, Blackwell traveled to Paris, France, and enrolled at La Maternité, a lying-in hospital under the condition that she would be treated as a student midwife, not a physician. She met Florence Nightingale while working as a midwife and became her lifelong supporter. In November, she was treating an infant with a severe eye infection and accidentally squirted some contaminated solution into her own eye, which contracted the infection, causing her to lose sight in her left eye, putting paid to her hopes of becoming a surgeon. She later enrolled in St. Bartholomew's Hospital in London, where she attended the lectures of James Paget, the famous pathologist. In one of her letters to her sister Emily, she states, "It is my impression, for I ought to put it in that modest form, that the ruling class in America is less humane, more addicted to money-getting and party spirit, and that the reform ideas in America are much more talked of but less acted on." In 1851, Blackwell decided to return to the United States with the hopes of establishing her own practice, which later became a significant part of her leadership and legacy. Her early years as this country's first woman doctor was not encouraging. She confessed deep unhappiness. I had no medical companionship, the profession stood aloof, and the society was distrustful of innovation. Insolent letters occasionally came by post, and my pecuniary position was a constant source of anxiety. The reputation of the term female physician has been sullied by ill-trained abortionists. In 1853, Blackwell established a small dispensary near Tompkins Square. In 1857, Dr. Marie Zarsqueska and Elizabeth's sister Emily also joined her and expanded Blackwell's original dispensary into the New York Infirmary for Indigent Women and Children, which led to Blackwell's exceptional leadership. Today, the dispensary is known as the New York Presbyterian Lower Manhattan Hospital. In the mid-1860s, Elizabeth Blackwell helped to organize the Women's Central Association of Relief. Dr. Blackwell also continued to fight for the admission of women to medical schools. Blackwell's leadership continued to help people. In the 1860s, she organized a unit of female field doctors during the Civil War, where Northern forces fought against those of the South over, among other things, slavery and secession. Despite all the adversities and difficulties women suffered on the home front, their contributions on the military front as nurses and spies provided vital support throughout the war. The Women's Central Association of Relief later became the United States Sanitary Commission. In 1869, Elizabeth Blackwell left the infirmary under the supervision of her sister and returned to England, where she organized the National Health Society and founded the London School of Medicine for Women. Blackwell's developments continue to be a part of her leadership and legacy. She carried on her efforts to open up the medical profession for other females. In 1875, Elizabeth Blackwell was appointed professor of gynecology at the London School of Medicine for Women. She continued to practice medicine until 1907, when she retired at the age of 86. She died of a stroke on May 31, 1910, at her home in Hastings, and she was buried in June.
The key difference is that she did it at a time when there wasn't much in the way of, rights for women, and that's the great aspect of her contribution.
Historians today state that Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell is one of the most inspiring figures in history. They mentioned that they were surprised only 31% of the doctor population consists of female doctors. Many medical professionals believe that Dr. Elizabeth Blackwell was a leader, because without her instigation, women today would not have the same rights that they do now. Blackwell's bravery left a legacy that will be forever remembered. When Blackwell died in 1910, there were over 7,000 licensed female doctors in the United States. Blackwell left a legacy that many women admired.
In the 1960s, about 6,000 to 8,000 people are admitted. As of 2012, there were 35,000 plus students admitted to medical school. The key change that has happened since 1960s is that the ratio of men to women has almost become equal now.
She worked 2 times as hard in order to prove herself worthy to society and achieve her goal. Dr. Blackwell struggled to set up the infirmary. She overcame a lot of financial and social hurdles to finally achieve success. This ordeal brought out the leadership qualities in her. She demonstrated that women can achieve anything if they put their mind to it. She spoke at numerous fundraisers in New York throughout the 1860s to raise money for her infirmary. She was able to convert public apathy and ridicule to admiration, and she obtained the funds required to run her hospital. Blackwell fought tenaciously for the right of women to become doctors, clashing with Florence Nightingale in the process when she worked in France. During the American Civil War, Blackwell trained many women to be nurses and sent them to the Union Army. Many women were interested in receiving training at that time. As she developed her practice, she wrote lectures on health and published them as a book named Laws of Life. The book had a special reference to physical education of girls. She also wrote a female education guide, which was published in Spain, along with her autobiography in 1895. There was widespread attention to Dr. Blackwell at the time. She was a proponent of women's rights from her early days. She tested tolerance and led other women behind her to do the same. She was proudly proclaimed as a pioneer for women in medicine, and as the first female doctor, Elizabeth Blackwell continues to be a source of inspiration for many women even today. Elizabeth Blackwell left behind a legacy that paved the way for generations of countless women physicians, and she showed great leadership throughout her lifetime.